You're listening to Women in Wellness, a program to help you create gorgeous growth for your blissful business in health and wellness. I'm Dr. Gabby, holistic health expert and founder of Women in Wellness, a one-of-a-kind course and community designed to empower and inform you about how to build a purposeful and profitable holistic business. And we have a super great guest with us today, Julie Smith. Julie's a licensed psychotherapist, speaker, and author. She's also the parent of 3 teens. She helps parent and other caring adults to translate adolescent behavior to understand what kids really need to thrive. Hi, Julie.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I think the most interesting part of your bio is that you have 3 teens.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's what I tell parents. I'm in it. It's not just me talking about kids or working with them. I'm in it 24/7. So I'm there with everybody.
What's that like? I mean, how do you balance teens and practice? I mean, you're doing so much in your practice. How do you manage that?
I think the first thing that I did was toss out the word balance, because that was a challenge for me, and it ended up being a trigger word when I felt like I have to be all things at once. And that helped me feel a little more grounded. And then I think that there's such fluidity between work and home, and I had to do that, but I also had to be very conscious about my boundaries to make sure that work is, I keep the emotions, the work there in the office. I only counsel in my office. And I told my kids, I'm your mom. I can't be your counselor. And this is it. Like, this is what you get. And they've been really good about that. I've had a lot of communication with them along the way, and they support, like, we're a team, so we support each other.
And why did you decide to become a psychotherapist? Was that a lifelong dream, or that something you found along the way in your path?
Well, yes and yes. I did not come about being a psychotherapist in the traditional way. I would fashion myself a workplace gypsy. And I think this is something that you and I have in common, is that we've had very transient lifestyles. I'm 46 and I've lived in 58 different houses. So
that was my favorite thing about you when I met you, because I told you when I met you, people think I'm crazy that I've lived so many places. You're like, I got you beat. I've lived in so many more places than you.
Oh, I know. And I'm not done. I'm still planning my next move and the move after that. So, but my work was like that too. I was in all these different fields, different industries, and I loved it. I loved experimenting with just life and work. But mental health and counseling, even coaching, was always where my heart was. And I think for me, it went back to when I was a teenager, where I was that kid. I was the one that teachers whispered about, parents whispered about. I remember arguing with my parents about up, down, all around. And I felt so misunderstood. And I know that they did as well. And it stuck with me. So even when I was dabbling in all these other fields and industries, I delved into human development, to communication trends, family trends, and was working with families on the side. But there became a time when I realized the cycle kept continuing, and that call to be a therapist really came into play. And yeah, I finally listened to those whispers that that's where I should go, and jumped into the field.
I feel like I also hear you saying something about stigma, that the sort of stigma of your experience was upsetting. And what I hear you saying is you almost like an advocate as well as a counselor. Absolutely.
And I think what we find so often and we don't do this purposely, but often we label kids. And there's a label around kids and parents as well. And then there's the stigma around issues that are affecting kids and affecting families. And what I like to do is normalize the conversation around those topics. So it could be around anxiety, depression, self-harm. Doesn't mean we're normalizing the behavior, but we're normalizing the conversation, so the stigma gets removed from there.
That's really powerful. And I was looking through some of the writings that you've done, and I saw that you were writing about kids and technology. Do you think that the way the kids are using technology is creating any of this anxiety, depression issues that you see?
I don't know if it's creating it. I think it's bringing it out more often. I mean, there are times when it does create it, but I think what we have to realize is that today's kids, they're digital natives. So anybody who's been born after 1980 has never lived in a world without technology. So to say that it's the only cause or that it's creating all of it isn't always true. I think what happens is there's more intensity to the things that they experience, and that's what brings out the anxiety, the overwhelm, because it's 24/7. And it's really important for parents and kids to make friends with technology, but also figure out how to juggle. I'm not going to use balance again, but to juggle both in real life and online, because what's behind technology is social. And that's what kids need, is that social exposure to try on new identities, to test things out. And that's because it's 24/7. That's where you see some of those behaviors coming out with technology.
And in the beginning of the conversation just now, you mentioned about boundaries. I'm wondering if boundaries is an important part for kids and technology. I think I see some families that it's anything goes, and it becomes kind of obsessive. And then I see some families, I'm thinking of this Buddhist teacher that I know, that he says he shuts everything off for adults and parents at like 8 o'clock, and that's it. Like, you have to interact on a human level. Do you recommend those kinds of boundaries too?
I do. I mean, you need to have boundaries. But what I do say is that there's no cookie cutter boundary. There's no one rule that works for everybody. It is based on your family, your child, and kind of the stage that your family's in. I had this great interview with my son, who's 16, and he had this amazing observation. He said, you can make rules for kids at 12 and you can make rules for kids at 16, but you might have a 16-year-old that acts like a 12-year-old and a 12-year-old that acts like a 16-year-old. So, and that's so true. You really have to look at the individual and decide what boundaries work for you. But I do think that there needs to be some boundaries.
You sounds like you have a very wise kid.
They school me every single day, and in life and business and everything.
You're like, they're in charge. They know everything.
They do. It's intimidating. It really is.
That's amazing. Another thing that I saw that you are promoting is a business boost for counselors program. And I'm really curious about that. I'm thinking one of the reasons that I started my community, the Women in Wellness community, is because I was teaching for like 10 years in holistic medicine programs, and all these students were coming out with diplomas and degrees and certifications, and then they were really deficient in the career and business skills. So they were struggling so much to get the clients or create the programs. Was that a similar motivation for you to create this program for counselors?
Absolutely, because so when I said my background was different, I actually have a degree in business. And that's where I started, was business. And I always knew I'd be an entrepreneur. And then I added the mental health piece. But one of the things I've realized as I've grown my business, counselors and therapists are taught to be counselors and therapists. They're not taught to be business owners. And it feels so uncomfortable for them. It feels like when they step into, I'm a business owner, that they're taking away from other people and that they don't serve. And there's a way to blend both. And that's been my motivation for creating the program. And I've worked with counselors one-on-one to help develop their programs, but I realized there's so much more that's needed out there.
What are some of the things that you see? Like, I see some common themes in my community where it's difficult for them to have a conversation about money. Just before we got on this interview, I was talking to one of my new clients, and she's like, I was talking to a friend and telling her about what I do, and the friend said that she wanted to sign up, and how much do I charge? And I said, oh, nothing. I charge nothing. And she's like, why did I say that? She's like, it just came out of my mouth. She's like, I didn't even think. And I was like, it's totally normal. Do you see certain habits that counselors have that are kind of self-defeating?
Yeah, there's a handful. And one of them is around money and around the ask. There's this idea that if I tell people my rates or I ask for money for, if we do a consultation, that it's going to make the others, that the client's going to feel poor about themselves. They're going to feel like, oh, I can't afford this, or, oh, you're taking advantage of me. And so we have to have that mindset shift so that they realize you can value, your clients are already valuing your service. You've got to be able to value that. The other one is this industry, the mental health industry, is desperate for specialists. And there is this overriding idea that if I specialize, I won't have enough clients. So I need to take everything. So I do a lot of work around finding your area of genius. Like for me, it's teenagers, it's middle schoolers, and it's high schoolers, and their parents. But for others, it could be, it could be the elderly. It could be women who are going through career changes, or divorce. It's really finding that area to specialize. And I think the last thing I see is also being able to specialize in yourself, like really valuing yourself. And I think we see this in every industry. It's that copycat idea. That person's doing X, Y, Z. I've got to be them. And so it's sitting back and listening to yourself first.
Great tips.
Well, and I think,
I love
we talk about it because we've been there, and we probably still revisit those areas a lot.
Yeah, I feel like for me, it feels like a constant kind of expansion, contraction. I feel like I kind of lean into something and I'm like, whoa, that's too much. And then I kind of pull back a little, and then I try to lean in again. And I feel like each time I get a little bit more comfortable in my expansion, but I don't feel like it ever stops, because every time I kind of raise the bar, then I have to push a little bit further outside my comfort zone.
I absolutely agree with that. I think it's often 3 steps forward, 2 to 2.5 back. And I think that's what life is, because we don't get to this point and say, oh, I'm good, I don't need to do anything more. It's that constant up and down. It's that evolution of ourselves and in my work, our families, our businesses, all these other pieces. And I think understanding that and remembering that it's a journey we all go through helps.
Yeah. And I mentioned when I read your bio that you're also a speaker and an author. How does that fit into everything that you're doing? Was that also a feeling like I want to have more exposure and share more ideas? How does that fit into your practice?
So what I have realized is, like, I love my practice where it is. And I also realize there are so many other talented individuals and families out there that are looking to just get the tools that they need. And so speaking and writing has become a way to share this to a larger audience, because we don't live in just a little bubble. Whether, I can be here in my town and work here, but our kids are going to venture out everywhere. Our parents are going to venture out into the world. So we have to have a conversation that expands our local communities. And really, I like to call it a global community. So it's global and local. And I think speaking and writing has afforded me that opportunity to share this message and really open up those courageous conversations that we need to have.
Nice. And do you participate in any communities that really support you to achieve your own goals with writing and speaking and being an entrepreneur? Like, one of the things that I continue to seek out, like we met via this 108 group, this mastermind group, I continue to seek out sort of mentors and communities that can help me to get better. Is that something that you think is important?
Absolutely. I think it's more than important. I think it's essential. And I think that it's necessary. And we all need a variety of different groups, because we get so much perspective and insight and accountability. And that's amazing. So for me, I have the 108 group, which I love because it's a variety of people from so many different backgrounds and even just locales. That's important. For me, I also have my industry group. So I attend those conferences. And then I do have a coach myself. I think that we all are looking to go to that next level. And that next level for some people might be, I want to have a full practice. For some people might be, I want to travel the world. We all have a different next level, but to have some accountability there helps. And then really supportive friends, that get it. And I find that a lot of my closest friends are the entrepreneurial friends that give you that accountability.
I love that. My friends are entrepreneurs too.
Best. I love my friends.
I feel like I couldn't even relate to the 9-to-5ers. Like, I feel like, because, in the middle of the day, if I'm like working out or like I'm, working from a coffee shop or whatever, it's just kind of incomprehensible to the traditional, work life style.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, when you're an entrepreneur, I think that there's this idea that it's not work life and personal life. They do weave together. And yes, we need to make sure that we have time for ourselves to nurture our soul and our mind. And yes, we have to focus on our business, but there's this fluidity between the two that I find that entrepreneurs can adapt more to that idea of it. And I don't know, they're the only ones that also understand when you're working 80, 90 hours. I think other people are like, what are you doing this for? I'm like, because there's a reason I have to.
A word that just came to mind as you were talking is like chameleon. We're kind of chameleon-like. You know, we kind of have to shape shift into like, well, now I'm social media person. Well, now I'm writer person. Well, now I'm coach person. Well, you know, like we have to be able to kind of shape shift in a lot of different ways.
I agree. And, you know, that brings up something that you had put together of we have to create a team of within ourselves. And we do have to put on different hats. And we might be, you know, Susie social media. We might be, you know, Jane, the, you know, jubilant office party gal, you know, whatever it is. But we do have to shapeshift into all of these different roles and almost these different people. And you have to adapt to that.
Yes. So you mentioned that you're being coached and you're up leveling. What are some of the things that you're really excited about for 2017? Can you give us a preview or tell us a little bit like what's exciting you right now?
There's a few things. Excitement is never my issue. I get excited about everything. But there are a few things that I'm really grounding myself in and excited to put out into the world. And that's one of them is what to do when. Because with teens and with, you know, middle schoolers and high schoolers, it's no longer a matter of if something happens or if they're exposed to things. It's a matter of when. And I'm so excited to put together a program called What to Do When. It's an online library for parents to give them the tools that they need right now to begin to have the conversations and to support their kids. So
that's
I'm
cool.
I'm so excited about that. And there's, you know, a retreat coming up in 2018. So all of that's exciting. That's probably the number one thing. And also it's getting out, well, and also the Business Boost program, because I love to connect with educators and counselors. That's amazing. But also just creating a community of like-minded people that always support each other. I think that usually is my number one priority every year, especially this year.
I'm thinking your program would be so fun. The What to Do When is like an app. So you're like having a crisis with your kid and you like open the app and it's like, what's the crisis? And you like click the button and it's like, do this.
You know, I keep trying to encourage my kids to take some tech classes so they could build that. And they've said no. So that it is.
Oh man, that would be so fun.
Never been a problem with them.
And I feel like it would be so applicable for a lot of life problems. Like if you could create that for me, so every time like something happens, I could just click on the app and you can tell me what to do. That'd be so fun.
I think there used to be this, I can't think of like, what would Brad Pitt do? And I used to have this domain. I love the Foo Fighters. So I owned the domain, what would Dave Grohl do? Because I was like, what would Dave Grohl do in this position? It was my own personal what to do. And so I completely get it.
That's so fun. Okay, you're awesome. And the stuff you're doing is awesome. And we're running out of time. So I want to make sure that people know how they can find you and connect. And if there's any kind of, you know, programs or retreats that are happening in the near future that would be valuable for our listeners.
Oh, thank you. I think if there are individuals who are interested in looking at that, you know, one, I think it's a good example of how to niche yourself, but also for parents, what to do when, and that's at whattodowhen.net. And other than that, I'm very active on social media. I love connecting and talking and carrying these conversations are, and I'm on every network with the username at It's Julie Smith. So ITS Julie Smith. And even my website's Julie Smith. I made it nice and easy. So
that's happy. Some of the healers that I work with, they make these convoluted websites where it's like gypsy crystal lady from, like, I don't know, like Pennsylvania. Like that's like the URL. No, please don't. Like, let's just keep it simple.
It's nice and easy. JulieSmith.com. I know. When I got that domain, I shouted aloud because I'm like, oh, this is so easy. That's my name.
Well done, Julie. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. It was fun to laugh with you and talk with you. I'm super grateful that you spent some time with us today.
Me too. Thank you so much. It was great to connect, and looking forward to talking more.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. You can join the Women in Wellness Club at women-in-wellness.com.